Hey, Sox fans, welcome to Good Guys Talk Back. This is a fan-centric Chicago White Sox podcast. Welcome to episode 204. I am Nick Murawski, and you can find this podcast absolutely everywhere. We are recording live on our YouTube channel, so if you haven't, head over there to subscribe, watch us, follow the podcast on Twitter at Good Guys TB. We've also got a Facebook fan page all over the social media world. Got some stuff to break down here. Some movement in the AL Central, not involving the Chicago White Sox. And John Murawski of the MLB Network, positive on the White Sox. We'll talk about that. But he's saying the same thing I think we've all been saying this offseason. And Nick Madrigal, that name will not go away. We're going to talk a little bit about him as well. To break all this down, my good friend, diehard Sox fan, Pat Hester. Hello.
Nick, it's good to talk to you, buddy. I cannot believe that we're going to spend time yet again talking about Nick Madrigal.
Mm-hmm.
But here we go. And this is where we are. And this is where this organization continues to put us because other teams make moves, make trades. The trade market. I was told the trade market would materialize and things would happen via the trade. And
the
look
dust
out.
is not settled all the way. Yeah.
Look out. Trades. And nothing has happened. So this is what we got, brother.
Yeah, I'm not going to lead with the Nick Madrigal. No one's interested in talking about Nick Madrigal, so let's. That's not a lead. We can't stomach it. I can't stomach talking about it right away, but we'll get there. About 3 weeks, Pat, until pitchers and catchers report. Roughly 9 weeks until opening day, and we are still waiting on that big trade. The big trade. It's if you're familiar with Seinfeld, it's like when that gentleman who did the triangles, right, was shoveling spaghetti in his mouth, and said, "So when's the big date? When's that big date, Elaine? Where are we going? Oh, sorry, I think we're off to the Poconos." And it seems like Han's off in the Poconos somewhere. I don't know what's going on. I don't even know if this trade's going to happen, but we were promised a trade.
Well, again, it was setting the offseason up for, there won't be any money spent. We can't throw money at things yet. We threw $75 million at a left fielder, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
And Clevenger came along, and that we'll see what kind of deal that ultimately pans out to be. But we were bracing and anticipating a trade market. And again, it leaves just me wondering, again, I go back to this year after year after year, set the market, set the tone for the offseason. Why do you have to wait for everybody else's chips to fall? Why does everybody else have to leave the table before you can pick up the scraps? Why don't you sit there at the table with you? You know, you do like the cartoon guys. You got this the napkin tied around your neck, and you got a knife and fork in your hand, ready to devour a meal. Why can't we be like
dreaming
that?
of like a T-bone steak? There's some sort of cloud dream of some sort of.
We're just like at the bottom, like little puppies scratching at the bottom, waiting for something to fall, into our mouths, and it's ridiculous. And again, these things continue to happen, and then the fan base, what if we traded this and then we got the Marlins, and it's like it's getting to the point of ridiculous now, because whatever trade could be done isn't for anything that's going to be worth anything.
Yeah,
am I right?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a deal that has been percolating, and just things have not come together, and maybe, just take some time. And then there's another chip that's added here and there. I don't know. Certain free agents are just about gone. I mean, if you think about Josh Harrison or Elvis Andrus as your possible second baseman, I think Boston's going to gobble up one or two of them with the Trevor Story situation, and they lost Bogarts, of course. And that's the worry, right? Is, like there are teams that are desperate. Like things happen to their club where they're not going to wait around. And if the Sox really saw Elvis Andrus as somebody early on, we want this guy back in the organization, well, then make that move. That move, right away. I don't know if that would have been like an early aggressive move. However, they did go after Clevenger like he was white hot. But yeah, those guys are still out there. But other teams are making moves in our division, and it could be for the White Sox addition by subtraction when the Minnesota Twins traded Luis Arraez to the Miami Marlins for essentially Pablo Lopez. I mean, Arraez, thorn in our side, Pat, obviously broke up Dylan Cease's no-hitter this past summer, a guy that you just felt like was getting on base 3-4 times a night, hits the contact, tough out,
Yeah.
he plays for the average, and it's not the first time a thorn in the White Sox side has been kicked out of the AL Central. But your initial thoughts, when you heard this go down with Luis Arraez?
Well, it seemed I was a little taken aback by it. It shows the desperation the Twins have to continue to try and bolster what their weakness is, which is their starting pitching, and bringing in a starting pitcher that's probably on the high side of 2 and a low side of 3, which is good. You need to have those guys. Everybody's got to have a 2 and a 3 in their rotation. So, but then again, from an opponent standpoint, maybe this is really stupid, but you're going to see that guy not every day like you will in Arraez. Like I guess at first blush, when it's not a top end ace type pitcher, I'd rather have Arraez out of the division. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. You'll see Lopez, 4, maybe 5 times. And hey, good pitching will be good hitting. So if Lopez is just lights out every single time he faces us, like we had those moments, maybe it was Scherzer or Verlander. We had moments where we handled Verlander, but there were also times where Verlander just ate our lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And to get him out, of the division finally was great. But anytime you saw that starting pitcher, you're like, well, that's a loss. We're just not going to be able to handle this guy. It's almost like with some of the Cleveland arms that we see and used to see. I mean, they've been gone. Corey Kluber left and Clevenger left. He went on a journey. Now he's back in the Central with us. So I'm glad Arraez is gone. Yeah, that's hey, whatever you're doing over there in Minnesota, but it just feels like to get so excited about that as a Sox fan that another team is making moves and we feel like we're the benefactor because we're not making any moves. It stings a little bit, but hey, it's exciting, but I wish it was us making our own future,
Well, do you think so? Let me ask you this, Nick. You saw it on Twitter. Do you think the majority of the fan base was quote unquote excited, and it was a more of a Bronx cheer type of thing? Like we've got nothing else to root for here. This isn't really. I'm not really that excited that the Arraez is out of the division that much. But this is the move that's made. This is in my mind bettering my team with having Arraez off the Twins. So I think it's more of a sarcastic clap, if you will.
Sure, I get that, and it is what it is. I mean, it's like it's not like the Sox were involved in this. We're just kind of sitting back and hopefully benefiting from that situation. But again, who knows what they've got in store with Pablo Lopez. And I just, you look at some of the arms that, we didn't really see it with Detroit, but we can. They've got some young arms. I mean, Cleveland still has some pitching. I wonder if, when Jose Abreu left for free agency and ultimately signed with Houston, if that's the reaction from other teams in the AL Central. It's just like, wow, we just I feel like we might have gained a little bit here. The fact that Jose Abreu is gone, and Jose Abreu definitely had his teams that he dominated and played really well against, but it might not be the same because Abreu was around so long and performed at such a high level. But I feel like the White Sox have been at least for me, I think about names like Lindor and I mentioned Scherzer and Verlander. And hey, when Whit Merrifield finally left the Kansas City Royals, thankfully, and I just hope I don't see him in the AL Central again. Cleveland and all their pitchers, Cruz. I remember when, it was finally, we don't have to deal with Cruz anymore. So that just seems like it happens and we benefit from that maybe, but you have to really benefit. That's like when teams get weaker in your division, that's where you as a club should say, well, then we need now to double down and get stronger, really step on some backs. If that's what you're going to do, if that's the move you're doing, you're sending a rise out of the Central, off of your team. Well, then, we need to be stronger, not just get stronger because someone else got weaker.
Yeah, it seems to me like this is going to be as we get closer, I'm sure we'll talk about it more. And I know we were going to reference some of the early predictions that have been made about this White Sox team in this division. But it seems to me like it's a 3-team race, and none of them are really head and shoulders above the other. We thought last year going into it that, and most people thought that this White Sox team would be head and shoulders above the rest of the division. The class of the division would probably run away and hide with this division, but that didn't pan out. Now with last year's failure, it makes you feel like this division is going to be really close this year, even though the White Sox were not the winners of the Central last year. So it'll be an interesting way to see how this season starts and how it pans out throughout the year. But it doesn't feel like one team is really going to be the dominant team in this division this year. I don't know how you feel about it.
Well, I mean, we could jump to what we saw on Friday on the MLB Network this past Friday, January 20th. John Morrissey just doing kind of a rapid fire on the AL Central. He had early predictions of how each team was going to place. And a little synopsis. Didn't spend a lot of time, a couple minutes on each team, positive, negative, kind of what their 2022 was like and where they're projected and who to look out for. And, he's got the White Sox winning the division, in 2023. And what he basically said, and again, these predictions were before the Arise deal, not like the Twins would jump up at all. But he did have, White Sox, Cleveland, Detroit, Kansas City. And he talked about health. The thing that we have been sold as fans from Rick Hahn and Sox, just I feel like Sox brass in general, like that has been the motto of return to accustomed levels. Let's just get healthy. Let's get our core healthy, all playing together for 135, 140 games. Let's have guys return to some of those breakout years that they had. Some guys that haven't quite hit their potential, they hit their potential. And then you lean in on, Kopech and Vaughn. And what Morrissey said, biggest problem for the White Sox in 2022 was health. Now, I would disagree because there were other problems, how they approached the game, chemistry. I think guys playing out of position, it was a mess for a lot of different reasons, but obviously because of health, guys had to take on different type of roles. So essentially what Morrissey is saying, what we're all kind of tongue in cheek saying as White Sox fans is just have a healthy season. Just stay healthy, everybody.
Well, you'd like to think that it would go that way. But I don't think you can bank on just everybody returning and being great. You're probably going to have some guys that actually regress, Nick. I mean, you're going to have some folks, and it might be a guy like a Lance Lynn, someone that's more of a veteran, has had injury issues. Obviously, the knee was it the knee or the back, or what was it last year that kept him out the beginning of the season?
Knee. I think it was the knee.
So it was the knee problem to start last year, and then he ended the year prior to that one on with some health issues. So I don't know that I can assume that we're just going to get the same level out of a Lance Lynn. I don't know what type of a level we're going to get with a Michael Kopech. There's a ceiling there, right? But there's going to be other guys on this team that may go the other direction, which ultimately might mean that you kind of average it out, right? And you're looking at another 500 season if that's the case.
A guy that was talked about a lot this past week. He made himself available to the media, and there were all different kind of videos. I feel like articles all over the place. Dylan Cease. Now, Dylan Cease, runner-up in the AL Cy Young Award, lost to Justin Verlander. One of the few bright spots of the 2022 season was Dylan Cease. Really stepped up. I mean, stepped up in a I've got pitches that you can't hit, and I'm just going to throw them, and, good luck. Just the confidence, the edge that Dylan Cease had. He had some nasty, nasty stuff. Walked a ton of batters, led the league in walks, but, you're going to have that as a strikeout pitcher the way he is. Would love for him to limit some of those 3-2 counts. Those, he throws a lot of pitches, and sometimes he just can't wipe a guy out. I'm sure he didn't want to trust the defense. I don't blame him, and he wanted to do it himself. Talked a lot about what he's working on a changeup. Feels like he doesn't really have to reinvent too much. It's fine-tuning right now. He's not going to pitch in the World Baseball Classic. He's preparing for the long haul for the 2023 season. Now, that's a daunting task, Pat. Is you came in second in the AL Cy Young. He's going to be the ace of the staff, and that's tough. We talk about Giolito, improving and returning to accustomed levels, or a Lance Lynn, or even a Clevenger, but dare I say, Cease has got a lot of pressure on his shoulders too.
Well, there's a scenario, Nick, where Cease could have a really good year, but not as good as last year, and it's a decline. He may not be as dominant. He may return back to a 2 or 3 type of guy, and that leaves you holding the bag for an ace of the staff. So again, I hate to. This is where you're at in this type of in this season, right? You're a lot of what ifs and projecting this and who's going to do that. I'd like to believe that Dylan Cease is on a trajectory of going up, and it's still, right. You're on the roller coaster, and we're going up the hill right now. But we just don't know because, he's never put it into back-to-back years, right? Because his career is short so far to this point, and he's had a lot of ups and downs early on. Last year was his best year, obviously, and the most consistent year that he's had. Now we've got to see it stacked back-to-back, right? And you mentioned a lot of videos and making himself available in media. Giolito did the same thing. People went gaga over some mechanics that he's working on and the way he looked. I don't know. I look at it and go, I can't, I'm a moron. Well, what do I know? He looked like he's throwing a ball, for crying out loud. So
he looks slender. He looks thinner.
Oh, yeah.
He looks like there's more, whip on the arm, more agile. How's that?
That's exactly what you were calling for, right? More agile. You wanted him. You wanted that whip,
like a jungle cat. Really spry, lean, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So 'tis the season for videos to come out on guys working on things, and some early predictions sure to go wrong. But it's good to hear that, and it's good to hear some positive things about this team. I think Gio had some positive things to say about Grifol and his conversations he's had with him, but the proof is in the pudding. We'll see what happens. I'm interested to see how these guys will attack spring training this year versus years past, if there will be a noticeable difference with a new manager and how guys are going to report to camp. But I think we're going to talk odds in a little while, Nick. I wonder what you think. Who is the first person to come into camp and say to a media person, "This is the best shape I've ever been in my life"?
You're going to get
who is going to have it? Who's going to have the best shape of their life?
I could see Eloy Jimenez maybe saying something like that.
Yeah.
I could see Tim Anderson maybe saying something. I think the focus is going to be, it'll be on the shape, what shape you're in. But I think the focus is going to be on this motivator from last season, and Giolito kind of already tipped the hand of what the edge is going to be with this team, what the, those sound bites that we all love, that we want to repeat. And, the motivator is the failure, how bad things went individually and as a team in 2022. And we've got something to prove, watch out. Like, we're taking back the AL Central, and, Murawski hits on what we as Sox fans realize. But again, to your point, you'd be foolish to just put all your hope and assume that for sure this is going to happen. It's the what if. It's if this could happen and we could get the core 5-6 guys playing good baseball, up to their potential, if not beyond, for 135, 140 games. It's scary when you really think about it. If you kind of just look at the lineup and you look at some of previous numbers when they were having great years and the lack of games that they've played and being together and all that kind of stuff. And if it just goes right, of course, I know better as a White Sox fan forever, but if it goes right for a majority of the season, it could be a magical year. And by magical, I mean like they're going to win the Central and
let's not think too big here.
Blackout game 3.0 or whatever. And Gavin Sheets is going to hit a bomb onto the concourse and they're going to give him just a ridiculous contract. And we won't hear from him for a couple of years.
Yeah, that'll be
so. There you go. I'm going on a deep dive there with predictions.
That
yeah,
is a big I can't wait till he's sitting next to you at a blackout game 3.0. And we'll be an early exit out of the playoffs yet again. It'll be one win.
So Murawski also said Graveman is most likely going to be the closer, and in his little kind of blurb on MLB Network. And I still don't know if a lot has to be sorted out. And, we've got a whole spring training. We've got 30 games. I'm assuming it's going to be, I think they know where they maybe want to lean right now. I still think Ronaldo Lopez can do it. I think he's got some, he showed a lot last season. He really did. He stepped up the control, and it's that nasty pitch though, that out pitch that he doesn't quite have, or at least I haven't seen it.
Well, Nick, it'll be interesting to see how they go, because I think if I'm a manager, I'm going to go with the known over the unknown to start the season. And if it's Kendall Graveman has, been in that position in the past, maybe that's what helps him return to his better form. Because again, I wasn't overly impressed by Kendall Graveman last year in the role that he was in. Maybe as a closer, he steps up and he's more of what we thought we were getting when we got him prior to last year. So if you're talking, we have to make a decision. I'm with you. I'm not really a big advocate for it, but if I'm playing the role of Pedro Grifol today, I'll say let's let the guy that's actually done it before in the bigs assume that role. And it's his job to lose type of thing. And let's go into the season with everybody having an idea of where their roles are, right? Because I think that was the biggest problem, whether it was you're talking about your bullpen or your starting staff or your everyday players. I don't think anybody really felt comfortable with what their role was on this team. And I think that'll be a really good way for Grifol to establish himself right away with this team and go, Tim Anderson, you are my everyday shortstop and you are my everyday leadoff guy. Not that was much of Timmy usually, let off, most games, but I think it's like this is who you are for me. Get used to that, know where you're going to be at, and be, well prepared to execute and win every day at that role. And I think that's just in normal life, when you're set up for success like that, I think if you have that like narrow focus on what you need to be doing, then you can succeed. And I think that'll help. Again, going from everyday players to your bullpen, it's like, okay, this is what we've established. And until further notice, be prepared to do this on a day-to-day out basis.
Yeah, I agree. I think we were calling for it last season with the lineup, the revolving door, the roulette wheel, however you want to phrase it, of what the lineups were like. And again, I know that there was health issues, but playing people all over the place, nobody really knew where they were going to be hitting or maybe where they were going to be out in the field. And AJ Przinsky made a comment about it. I think it was during a national game. And he said, something that he really valued was knowing where he was hitting in the lineup on a consistent basis. Like he walked in, to get ready for the game. Like he knew going into his prep, into his routine. Like he didn't even have to almost check the lineup. He just kind of knew who was going to be in front of him, who was going to be behind him, and how that was going to go. And it just there's a comfort, I think baseball players like most athletes and most humans in general, like they get into routines, and I think they perform under routines. And when things are all over the place, sometimes you have to, because of unforeseen situations. But I would like there to be a precedent early, coming out of spring training, of this is where we're going. This is what I'm putting out on the field. Set it and forget it. And we'll see what happens. And if I need to make adjustments, I need to make adjustments. But I don't want to be whipping around and throwing people in different spots in the lineup, just knee-jerk reaction like that. That's not like, let it go, let it marinate.
How long do you think we could go? How long would you give if you're a manager, Nick, and you're, maybe it's the beginning of the season or you're into the season and the offense just isn't clicking the way you want, or maybe your bullpen, the guys aren't executing. How long of a leash would you give it before you make changes? Is it 2 weeks of bad play? Is it a week? How long do you need to see?
You asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
I'm
Nick
the
Murawski.
manager.
Yeah,
if
Nick
I'm the
Murawski
manager, well, you know my mentality. It's every game counts just as much. Okay, so I'm counting my March, my April, my May. That's where I'm going to make hay. That's where I'm going
just
to
rhymed right there.
Well, that's one of the things you get with me as a manager. I do a lot of rhyming.
There you go.
That's where I'm going to steal wins. Okay, that's where I'm going to grab wins. It's inclement weather. I'm going to steal some wins, because it is going to be difficult down the stretch. And I'm not going to take the beginning of the season for granted. And like, well, we're going to play for the long haul. And, we're playing for October. That's great, but you should be playing for right now, because you could really set yourself up when there are going to be injuries, when there are going to be lulls, in those dog days. You open up against Houston. You also know me where I'm in on every game. I'm in on like every inning. My emotions are, I remember opening day last year when they blew that game in Detroit. I was almost unconsolable. I was absolutely livid, and people trying to talk me off the ledge on social media, loved ones, friends, like, hey guy, it's the first game. Like, you don't understand. These are precious. You can't just be giving them away. So the opening series is, of course, Houston. It's a 4-game series against Houston, in Houston. So I think you have to, kind of look at that and maybe in a different light. And then you come home against San Francisco, and then you've got Pittsburgh and Minnesota. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe 2 to 3 weeks, but I also feel like you got to let guys, find their groove, find their rhythm. That's where my, if it's not working after a couple weeks, but I don't know that if it's not working, maybe it's because it was never supposed to work in the beginning. Like Lurie Garcia was leading off, and I wouldn't put, again, okay, let's try this out, guys, for a couple weeks. Let's let him find himself. Hey, look at the numbers. That should have never been a thing to begin with. All right. Lurie Garcia was never supposed to be in the leadoff spot. Look at his 9 numbers compared to his 1 numbers. Does that make sense?
The day that he is done, I'm taking a day off of work. We're going to have a nice meal together. You and I. My treat, too.
Man.
My treat.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, it might not be for a while, friend. But I don't know. Maybe
I got time to save up.
Maybe he's involved in some of these trade conversations that'll never happen. I think Grifol has said it too a little bit in some of his comments of how important the early months are, and creating that culture and playing with urgency and not sitting back on your heels and materializing and kind of waiting for the season to come to you, which is kind of what the White Sox do in the off season. They wait for things to come to them, like attack, play to win. Just, don't play just to not lose. Go ahead.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. I think, again, that'll be the fun part about, as we, you said 3 weeks until spring training. I don't think we'll get much out of, what what kind of guy Pedro Grifol is from a manager perspective, in spring training, really. But, as this season starts and progresses and goes, I'm going to give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. There's going to be a honeymoon phase with this, right? There's always going to be mistakes made, whether it's him or a 3-time World Series champion manager. But I'm excited to see, his thought process, the situations he's going to put his guys in, how he manages that bullpen. It'll be an interesting talking point because there will be games where we're going to question decisions that are made. But again, I'm just hoping that he's a guy that's going to be like, okay, I don't need to be real cute here, right? I'm going to take all the information that I have in terms of the analytics and all that kind of stuff, but just some things are just too simple to try and, to try and work around and make yourself feel too smart, right? Just manage the game. And that's why I still do. And I know you do. I love an Ozzie Guillen. It's like, get guys on a roll and get out of the way. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Get them on a roll and get out of the way.
Yeah.
So work really hard to get everybody pulling on the same end of the rope, get the lineup to where it needs to be, where it's the most successful, and get the hell out of the way and let the guys play. That's what I'm really hoping for in a Pedro Grifol.
And if they get in their rhythm and then it starts rolling that way, then yeah, absolutely. Like, don't try to tinker with it. I think there's a preparedness,
Mm-hmm.
and he has talked about how the Kansas City Royals approached the White Sox and the vibe that he got from other teams of how they approached the White Sox last season, just especially in terms of outfielders. Take extra bases on the White Sox outfielders because they don't have arms, because they're not actually outfielders, and that's the kind of stuff that I'm looking for from this White Sox team that hopefully he can bring, and his new coaching staff that he's familiar with. I feel like, I wouldn't say it's necessarily handpicked, but a lot of these new faces, he has had some sort of relationship with him, and he's bringing them in. They've had healthy communication, and how this White Sox team attacks, tries to catch you off guard, tries to exploit an opponent's weaknesses, whether it's grabbing an extra base or, catching a third baseman napping, whatever it can be. It's the game within the game within the game. And you win those little battles here and there, and it adds up. But you got to have the mentality and the approach. You got to be prepared to do that. Like, this is our focus. And I hope he's the guy that, all the talk has been great, but I really hope, heading into spring training and out of it, like, we actually see some action. He talked on, Grifol was a guest on, I think it was Bruce Levine's show, 670 The Score this past weekend, and talked about just the closer role a little bit, and it could be committee. I don't like hearing that, but obviously the Sox have to deal with some situations here. As we're all, thinking about Liam Hendricks and his battle that he's going through. But the Sox, maybe it is depending on the night. I don't like it that way, but Graveman, I mean, how often did he pitch back-to-back nights anyway?
It wasn't many nights, so it's going to have to be closer by committee if you're in situations night after night where it's got to be a save situation. So you're probably not, if he pitches, I don't know, more than 25 pitches in a save situation, he's probably not going to be available the next night, wouldn't you say?
I from what I saw, and but he also had like this game plan of workload management that he presented, I think, to the White Sox staff during the season or at the beginning of the season. Like, based on my history and everything, this is how I want to approach this season. Like, he had a lot of data. I don't know if that changes, if he's feeling healthier, if he's been able to, regroup and has a different maybe workout program or however, but it can't just, you can't be limited to like, well, hey, if I get to a point, I can't be the next day. That could sting a little bit, but that'll I think sort itself out in spring training.
Wasn't it Roger Dorn in Major League? Wasn't it Dorn, the third baseman, that would like Olay everything, and it just seemed like guys had to get on him to like be engaged and be part of it. That's what I feel like. It's like, dude, just we need you tonight. you need to get over this workload management stuff. Everybody's got a tough road to hoe here. We need
Yeah.
you. Get over it.
So again, another AJ Przinsky, like he had some good ones throughout the season when he did the national games.
He does a nice
and,
job.
and
AJ's, transitioned nicely
yeah.
into the booth.
And I don't know if it was Aloy or one of our many players last season was dealing with some leg soreness. I think it was AJ Pollock actually.
Oh God, yeah.
And dealing with some leg soreness. And this was like August or something. And AJ Przinsky said, leg soreness. Everybody's got leg soreness. It's late August. Okay. That's what happens when you're a baseball player. And I thought it was just a brilliant like call out of that's the grind, like nobody is healthy right now. Everybody's dealing with these just, nagging little injuries here and there. Like, suck it up, Buttercup. You got a division to win or at least, try. So hopefully some of that changes and there's a different mentality there. Oscar Colas, no surprise, is going to be given every opportunity, to prove that he should be the right fielder. Feels a lot like a couple seasons ago when Andrew Vaughn was pushed hard, as potentially the DH. And then, Aloy tore his, was it his pectoral muscle, leaping for trying to rob a home run in spring training. And then all of a sudden Vaughn got into a different situation, but it felt like we don't have a legit DH heading into the season, but Andrew Vaughn's going to be the guy. I think he can actually do it. And he was very unproven, and I don't expect much from Oscar Colas. I really don't. I've heard good things. The scouting report is refreshing. I think he's going to struggle. I think that's just how it goes, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're not going to come into the league and just mash. You might have moments. You might have Mercedes moments, and then you're going to quiet down. And then can you handle the quiet down? Can you regroup and handle the funk? Who's the mentor to Oscar Colas? Abreu's gone. Who's stepping up is the veteran that's going to take some of these young guys and say, hey, look, this is how it's going to go. And don't get too high. Don't get too low. This is what we need out of you. Like, hang in there, man. It's a journey.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. It would be, amazing if we had just a guy on our hands that was a superstar right off the bat, but that, very rare does that happen. So, I don't think there can be much expected out of him. It'll be nice to have him in a lineup and not have to really count on him for too much other than just to grow, right? We need you to grow into, a difference maker maybe down the stretch. And as hopefully we enter a playoff run where you've gone through those failures and those ups and those downs of the season. And we've been able to survive and thrive with you while you're doing that. Right.
Yeah.
If it's a situation where it's like he sticks out like a sore thumb and man, it's always him in the lineup when and it is always turning the batting order when we've got somebody on and we need a big hit and he fails again because he's flailing at breaking balls out of the zone, because that's what typically young players do in this league is they aren't disciplined enough to not swing at those pitches. So, again, I'm fine with him if we can be strong enough as a team around him to, again, weather those ups and downs and enjoy at the same time and enjoy the big moments he will have, because he'll have some nice moments as a young player and a power hitter that he is.
Can I tell you what could be a best case scenario for the Chicago White Sox? It's not my dream. It's not my dream scenario. But this is what what we have. Okay. This is right field right now. We've got Oscar Colas, Gavin Sheets, I'm sorry to say, and maybe Eloy Jimenez is going to take some reps over there. Okay. Maybe it's going to sound like a good idea, but the reality is not just going to be there. We'll see, but don't be surprised if Eloy Jimenez is roaming right field for a little bit. I think the best case scenarios is Gavin Sheets has an unbelievable spring training. He mashes the ball. He's locked in. He looks serviceable in right field. There's no face planting. He's hitting the cutoff man. And
can you just not face plant? That's all we're asking for.
No face planting, please. Just don't trip yourself up. We don't need that. Bill, the hat flying it's a bad look for everybody. Just don't do that. Gavin Sheets has a great Glendale. And they say to Oscar Colas, we need you in AAA for a little bit. We want you to get your swing right, mature just a little bit, maybe 3 weeks, maybe a month. I don't know, because Gavin Sheets just killed it in spring training. Instead of it being like, ooh, I don't know who we're going to go with. Let's go with Colas because that's the exciting guy right now. And maybe he's not quite ready and he struggles and it's a problem to get back right, with his swing. Maybe he's trying too hard and all that stuff. That's not my favorite scenario, but I think personally that could be the best case scenario.
Well, I'm okay with that too, Nick, but my goodness gracious, I just cannot. I don't know if I can stomach a season where we're starting out again, where you're asking someone that doesn't play outfield to play outfield.
I hear you. I know it. But those are the cards that are on the table right now. Those are the
Lord in heaven.
Those are the cards that we have. And if Gavin Sheets been working at it, hey, maybe something happened in the offseason where he is all of a sudden become a right fielder. I don't believe it, and I'm just trying to talk myself into this positivity. But I worry about Oscar Colas not getting off to a hot start, maybe, and just trying too much because he's been hyped up, and maybe he's believing in the hype a little bit. And then that's a tough spot.
You know what though? If an Oscar Colas can, I'm okay if he's not ripping the cover off the ball to start. But if he's giving me a plus defensively and can cover some ground and he can run the base as well. See, there's a lot more to the
Good point.
All that stuff, because he's not going to be put up in the lineup where it's really going to make too much of a difference. He's going to be put down probably in the lower third, I would assume, because he's a young player, and let himself try and work himself into the year. If he can prove himself to be, again, just do some simple things, some fundamental things well. Play a solid enough right field for us that's better than a Gavin Sheets. Run the bases and give us something there, and do those types of things well, and you can probably break camp with this club.
What I want to see when I go to spring training and when I'm watching right field specifically, and if he's out there and he has an opportunity to make a play, I don't want to kind of say to myself like, wow, he actually looks like he knows what he's doing. I want it to just look like natural, or like he is in control out there. He knows what he's doing. But you're right. If Colas is serviceable with the bat, okay, maybe he's not, nothing to write home about power-wise. That'll show up eventually, we hope. I'm sure that he's going to have to figure out major league pitching, which is going to be an issue. Everybody, has dealt with it. But if his defense is there, I get that point. I would probably lean towards the defense,
because it's been so god awful, Nick, over the last couple of years that, even just doing the routine things, right? Like breaking on a ball, whether it's to the line
first break,
or in the gap, and God, for, having communication with your center fielder where you're not always
taking a route to a ball instead of just these weird roundabout like cul-de-sac moves where you're basically telling the hitter, like, go ahead and take second. If you're thinking about third, you might want to, because as soon as I get this ball, I don't know if I'm going to be able to throw it there.
So those are the types of things. I'll take that. I'll take a little bit of a minus in the lineup if I can get some solid, because again, we need to be able to save some runs too. It's not always about just scoring the runs.
Yes, 100%.
It's like,
I get
geez,
that.
Louisa.
But I am so starved for power and just offense that's where my brain is at because of last season. But I agree with you. Defense was absolutely
but Nick, when it gets
horrible.
warm, wait till it gets warm, Nick.
Oh yeah. Yeah, balls will be flying out.
Just your neck's going to break looking over your shoulder. All these balls just leaving the ballpark.
Night. Yeah. Speaking of defense, let me just say this to you, Pat. Nick Madrigal. How would you feel if Nick Madrigal was back in a White Sox uniform playing second base in 2023?
Nick, tell the fine folks that are watching this live and they're going to listen to this later what I said to you when we talked before we started recording. What was it I told you that I would rather have?
Oh my goodness. You were not happy. I do remember that.
That what I said was a lot of people have them. Usually they're older age and usually they're females that have the plastic or the geese statues, those little
stone.
geese,
Yeah,
the
some of them are
stones,
stone,
and
yeah,
then they dress
painted.
them up, right? They
Yeah.
dress them up for the holiday. So it's
All different seasons. Yeah.
yeah, it's Valentine's Day coming up.
Uh-huh.
So we'll put some heart glasses on the goose and a little pink tutu, something like that.
Something fun.
St.
Sure.
Patrick's Day, we'll put a little
vest.
shamrock.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
Mhm.
I'd rather have that stuck out there at second base
Oh boy.
than have Nick Madrigal come back and be our second baseman. Is that?
Yeah.
I honestly would. I'd rather see what we have in our guys that we
Where's
have.
Bill Veck when you need him? I feel like that's a perfect Bill Veck promotion.
My team is on the field, and this is who we have. Well, you have a goose out there, sir. You have my team is on the field.
My team is on the field. I do not want to see Nick Madrigal back. I feel like that would be an admission in so many ways to just the failure and the ineptness that we already know as White Sox fans of what the organization is all about. But those were the rumors recently. And the Cubs, I don't know if they have a spot for Madrigal. I think Madrigal himself is wondering, where am I going to be playing? How is this going to work out? And our friend, the White Sox whisperer, Bob Nightingale, had a little blurb about it and said, not sure what's going to happen with the Chicago Cubs and their second base situation, but who is looking for a second baseman? Yep, the Chicago White Sox.
See, that's what worries me is the fact that he said it.
He's starting to plant the seed, man.
Well, then I might as well just get myself ready for it. Okay, so Nick Madrigal, again, this will go back to the similar conversation I had about Colas, right? I have zero expectation. You're never going to hit. You have 3,000 hits. So whatever you thought at one point in your life where you're going to get 3,000 hits,
that's why you don't want him back because of
just because he thought he was. Yeah, well, that was moronic. But okay, just do the other things. Run the bases well. You were a terrible base runner. Let's work on that. Number two, can you just field the position? That's if you're going to be on the team,
arm strength questionable.
If you're going to be on this team, you need to be able to do those little things really, really well. I could give two shits about Nicky two strikes and your singles, that you're going to get here and there. I don't care about it. If you're going to be my second baseman, I need you to just do what normal people do at second base, and do what normal people do on the base paths too.
Mm-hmm.
Is that too much to ask?
He just didn't seem like it felt like the game was going a million miles an hour for him.
Well, he was going a million miles an hour. Do you remember watching Scooby-Doo when Shaggy would start to run and he'd levitate and the legs would go before
all
he
the
would
dust,
start to move,
all the smoke behind. Yep.
And then that's how I felt watching him run. It was like a cartoon character.
Yeah. Well, I appreciated the fact that we were being sold on a guy that didn't strike out. That was the big selling point. Here's a guy that's just never going to strike out. You're going to love him.
He's never going to do anything else either.
He's going to be our next Nelly Fox. He is going to just be a hits king, and he gets on base. He's got a great eye, got a great approach, and I bought it, man. I really did. I listened to his head coach from Oregon State. He was on Chuck Garfine's podcast a million years ago. It's like, I think this is going to work out. Stop the strikeouts. We just need somebody that can, and he wasn't having a horrible year until he tore his hamstring. What was it in 2020? It seemed like he was starting to maybe, pick up a little bit, hitting the ball in the gap, some doubles, but he couldn't get out of his way in any other spot. So
when you think about it, Nick, that kind of goes back to the same scenario I was painting before. When the team was successful, when the entire team is you can live with a guy like a Nick Madrigal. So I'm going into this season off of a 500 season where you did, you came in. What did we finish? Did we finish third in the division? I can't even remember now. Whatever we finished, it was well below where we thought we would finish the season. And now you have a lot of questions and what ifs and a new manager and you still have this question mark at second base. And we keep bringing up this guy. Again, you could talk me into a Nick Madrigal at second base as long as the rest of the team is functioning the way it should. You can live with that hole in your lineup. Really, you can't.
I want to start the Edwin Encarnacion for DH. Like, let's bring him. Let's get him back. Like, folks, let's figure that one. I'd like to start. Like, who's a right fielder? Like, is Adam Eaton still playing? Is he still available? Like, what about what if we gave him another chance? What if we were so off on Adam Eaton? What if we tried it? Like, what if we just tried it and it was just absolutely great? And like I don't like that game. Like, I don't like that game. I don't want to be playing that game. I want to go after premium talent. And I want to. Nothing's a sure thing. But there are some things that are like pretty close.
White Sox baseball, lightning in a bottle. That'd be a great giveaway night. And also, I cannot believe that we've gotten through 51 minutes of this episode, and you haven't brought up the promotional nights yet.
The promotional,
does that get its own? Does that, like, we have to do a standalone, like a Friday, like a prime time episode?
That is going to be, you can't be dropping this on me at this time.
Well, I'm just surprised it wasn't brought up.
Well, because I'd like, I'm going to model maybe some of the previous promos and the Hawaiian shirts, of course, and all the other fun items. It's a nice list. It's the initial list, and it's been out for a little while, but starting to see some of the images now for the first time. At least I've been seeing them recently, and that Hawaiian shirt looks nice. I'll be there. Those bobbleheads. There's only 2 right now that they're talking about, which is low.
They're going to throw more bobbleheads. The lines for the damn bobbleheads are crazy.
Oh yeah. Well, they're unorganized and holy cow, I've got stories beyond stories of what I've seen in those lines. When the gates go open, it's just oh man, it's Mad Max. So we'll talk promos eventually. I want to talk some odds, the early odds. Now, I was on FanDuel, and different odds in different sites, and this is early. So if you're thinking about putting some money on the White Sox, you might want to get it now, because I think this team will win the AL Central, and obviously the odds are not going to be in your favor as the season goes on. But to win the AL pennant, Sox are plus 1440. Okay, that's as of a couple days ago. New York Yankees and Houston Astros, they're best at plus 300. Okay, so Sox, further down for the AL pennant. Now for the AL Central, the Sox are tied with Cleveland as the odds-on favorites to win the AL Central at plus 160. So they're tied with the Guardians for the Central. Now, let's talk AL MVP. Now, Shohei Ohtani, he's gonna be the leader probably for majority. He's at plus 220 to win the AL MVP. First White Sox name, a little ways down, is Luis Robert. He's at plus 5,000. A bit of a stretch right now, according to FanDuel. But hey, if Luis Robert stays healthy, and he has a breakout campaign.
You're going to talk us into putting some money down on Luis Robert. It's great value.
At these odds right now, it's not a
Nick,
bad idea.
have you ever placed a bet in your life?
Yes, I placed a bet. When you and I went to Vegas.
No, I mean like on one of these. This is
like in the back alley somewhere here on the south side with somebody that.
You got a guy. I think this is going to be our first show bet. You and I. This will be it. I don't know.
Would you not bet on Luis Robert right now? Would you put?
I would.
Any money on him?
No, I would. I would put a shekel down. I don't know. I don't know what your comfort level is to put down dollar wise, but at plus 5,000. I mean, why the hell not?
That's what I'm saying, and I just don't. They have him listed at Luis Robert Jr. by the way. Which is neither here nor there. I just thought that was kind of interesting.
Does it bother you?
I just It was like when Dusty Baker, all of a sudden, he had
Oh my
Baker
gosh.
Jr. on the back of his jersey out of no. Okay. Anyway, I think this is the time to do it. You put it in because he's the guy, man. He's Mr. Danger. I think it's going to be the year of Vaughn. I think Eloy Jimenez is going to have some really good numbers, but he's the man. Robert's the guy that can really take this team.
Here's the thing, Nick. If that is the case, now this is going to sound really stupid when it comes out of my mouth, but if he wins the MVP, because he hasn't even sniffed it in the past, and because he's not the national name, that would mean he would have had to have one hell of a year, right? Like he'd have to have a year beyond year. Like it can't be close.
Well, and the Sox would have to have just an unbelievable
exactly.
Year.
So it's like it can't be like, well, Trout didn't have as good of numbers, but because it's Trout, he's going to get the nod, right? Or he's not Ohtani. Ohtani maybe gets the nod because of whatever. Like sometimes there's that popularity contest that comes into play.
I understand it. I understand it, and I feel like that's kind of what happened in the Cy Young, although Dylan Cease kind of fell off a little bit towards the end of that season, and Verlander, I think everybody was all in a lather with
Well, Verlander was on the IL for a while though too. Yeah. He was on the shelf,
and Cease could have took advantage of that and didn't quite do that. But still, amazing year from Dylan Cease. Now, in terms of Cy Young odds, get this one, get this, Pat. Listen to this closely. Cease is at plus 1,000. Okay, on FanDuel, plus 1,000. Who's ahead of him? Carlos Rodon is at plus 950. Does that strike you as just kind of funny? I just kind of laughed. I was like, that's funny to me that Carlos Rodon is ahead of Dylan Cease.
That
only if the White Sox drafted Carlos Rodon and developed him. That would have been so crazy to have Carlos Rodon and Dylan Cease in the same rotation.
What kind of a outlook on this season would we have if we had Carlos Rodon still on this team? Would it be completely different, slightly different, or the same?
If the Carlos Rodon that just did what he did in San Francisco, if Jerry
came back and found, if somehow, some way we paid the premium price that the Yankees paid. What kind of an outlook on the season? Is it slightly different, the same? What say you, Fuzzy?
I tell you what, we wouldn't be talking about Luis Rise leaving the AL Central. We wouldn't be talking about Hawaiian shirt giveaways.
Probably true.
I think if they did that and they brought Carlos Rodon back, I feel like why stop there? And if you're going to play that game, that means they gave that amount of money and that something happened. Like Jerry just was like Brewster's Millions. He's trying to like give away all of his money as fast as he possibly can. And there probably were a couple other players that came in, and we're looking at now AL Elite, not just, we could probably win the AL Central. We're like top 5 in the American League.
Well, I do. So maybe we look for a little bit better value on it than Dylan Cease, but I don't know. We'll play with that one a little bit. But I'm willing to put like a couple marbles down on Luis Robert.
All right.
With you, can I do it with you? Because I don't do.
You are going to go on a bet. Okay.
I'm not opening an app of any kind. Okay. You seem to know what you seem like a very experienced gambler. So,
yes. Well, what if I just brought in like a stone goose somewhere? Just like, I'd like to wager this. Do you take interesting wagers? Is this kind of like a pawn shop betting service? Could I maybe bring this in and just as collateral? I'm good for it.
I don't know how you send that in over the app, though. Do you have to take a picture of it?
I think you'd have to to know that you're in possession of his stone goose. But I think Robert, that's a nice bet right there. I'm looking at that. Just if we're going off of everybody stay healthy, everybody get back to form. Ooh, that's one guy that if he gets back to form and stays healthy, watch out.
All right,
watch out.
You make the bet, and I'll
sounds good.
I'll pay you later.
Pat, always a pleasure talking White Sox with you, my friend.
Wow, this was a great episode. A lot of fun. Maybe we could do it again, and maybe we'll have a second baseman by next week. What's the odds on that?
Odds are not good,
Oh boy.
and odds are even worse that you're going to like the person that it could be. So let's not even. Let's not even. Let's
Either
just wait.
way,
Yeah.
we'll have a date for next Sunday
Yeah,
night, my
that
friend.
sounds wonderful, folks. Thank you so much. If you were able to consume this podcast on YouTube, if you didn't, check out that channel of ours, subscribe, and check out the next live recording. You can find this podcast absolutely everywhere you find your podcast. Pass it along to other Sox fans in your life. We're on Twitter at Good Guys TB. We've got a Facebook fan page. For Pat Hester, I am Nick Murawski. Until next time, go Sox.